How strong of a team is this compared to the West? Do you think they're going to work next year?
Well, it's not a very strong team at all. They got worse.
And now you know the only reason that they were doing that is because their favorite guy, LeBron, was on the team. But now that he's no longer on the team, and the Lakers have made some considerable movement in the free agency, market, gotten some really good pieces. Now Nick Wright is trying to convince himself and LeBron fans that the Lakers got worse. And man, it is absolutely pathetic.
LeBron versus Michael. When did LeBron pass Kobe? 5-4. Wait, you guys are putting him against Michael. When did he pass Kobe? Hating on LeBron to call him the second greatest player ever. Yes, we all know he's the second greatest player ever, but he's no Michael Jordan.
Nick Wright accidentally destroys LeBron's legacy while praising Jordan, and once people heard it, they caught it instantly. Because this was not one of those reaches where fans are twisting somebody's words. This was straight from Nick's own mouth, and that is exactly why it hit so hard.
You know what? Let's just not have the argument anymore. They're both great. Let's just agree to disagree. That's happening. And the other thing that started with the Steph conversation is, you know what? Everybody's a GOAT. Steph's a GOAT. Kobe's a GOAT. LeBron's a GOAT. Kareem's a GOAT. Michael's a GOAT. They're all GOATs. They know they've lost the argument.
What made this moment even crazier is that Nick was not trying to talk about Jordan versus LeBron directly at first. He was trying to make a point about the modern NBA. He was talking about resting, players sitting out, meaningless regular season games, and how the league is losing some of what made it feel special. On the surface, that sounds like a normal basketball rant. Plenty of people say the same thing. Fans are tired of buying tickets just to find out the stars are not playing. Analysts complain about it all the time. So at first, it sounded like Nick was just doing what Nick does, giving a strong take and leaning into it. But then he brought up that Jordan story, and that is where everything flipped.
So doing this at age 39, year 21 seemed impossible. So the idea that he wouldn't still be a really good player at 42 in year 24, like I just don't think he'll ever be bad.
He starts talking about being a kid, about how his mom took him to New York to watch Michael Jordan play the Knicks in the final game of the regular season. And that part matters, because this was not some playoff classic. This was not Game 7. This was not a must-win battle for seeding. In fact, by his own retelling, the standings were already set. The Knicks were locked into one spot. The Bulls were locked into another. The game basically meant nothing in terms of the bracket. But Michael Jordan still played major minutes. Patrick Ewing still played major minutes. And to Nick, that moment mattered. It stayed with him. It helped make him fall in love with basketball. And that is where the trap closed. Because the second you tell a story like that, you are no longer just making a point about one game. You are creating a standard. You are telling the audience what greatness looks like to you. You are saying that even when the game doesn't matter in the standings, the true stars still show up, still play, and still give fans something real. And once you say that out loud, once you frame it that clearly, you cannot control where people take it next. Because now they have your rule. Now they have your measuring stick. And people immediately knew where that measuring stick was headed. Here's the part nobody's talking about. Nick did not just praise Jordan in that moment. He praised an entire mindset. He praised the idea that legends don't check out just because the stakes are low. He praised the idea that the game always matters, the fans always matter, and the standard should always be the same. That sounds great when you were talking about Jordan, but when you've spent years building one of the strongest public defenses of LeBron James in sports media, you'd better be very careful with a standard like that, because if LeBron doesn't match it, then you have a problem, a big one.
No, he played 5. Without him? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I count the whole career. The whole career.
Even
silly me.
But one, he was hurt when he came back the second year.
The whole career.
Okay.
He wasn't hurt in the playoffs when he got his ass swept.
And this is where it gets dangerous, because LeBron's career, for all its greatness, has not followed that exact model. Over the years, especially later in seasons when playoff spots were already decided or when the team had reasons to be cautious, LeBron has set. Sometimes he missed the final game entirely. Sometimes he barely played. Sometimes it was rest. Sometimes it was managing wear and tear. Sometimes it was a bigger long-term decision. Whatever label you want to put on it, the fact remains the same. The path LeBron took is not the same one Nick just celebrated in that Jordan story. Now, to be fair, that doesn't automatically mean LeBron was wrong. That part matters. This is not about pretending body management doesn't matter. It obviously does. The league is older, smarter, more cautious, more invested in long-term health than it used to be. Teams protect players, stars protect their bodies. Everybody understands the grind differently now. That is real. But the problem here is not whether resting is always bad. The problem is consistency. If Nick wants to say the game has changed and stars sitting out hurts the fans, then okay, say that. But if you are going to do that while also building your whole public identity around defending LeBron at every turn, then people are going to check whether your logic applies to him too.
And expose Nick Wright like I've never exposed Nick Wright before. And to tell you the truth, he's going to help me with it.
This is where young players usually make a mistake. They think fans only hear the conclusion. They do not. Fans hear the framework. They hear the rule you are building underneath the point. And that is exactly what happened to Nick here. He was so locked in on making this emotional case about why the modern NBA feels weaker, softer, less committed, that he forgot what his own example was actually saying. He forgot that once you praise Jordan for showing up in a meaningless game, you are quietly criticizing everyone who did not. And LeBron is not excluded from that just because Nick likes him more. The reason social media jumped on this so fast is because it was simple. It was not some complicated spreadsheet debate. It was not advanced analytics. It was basic logic. Nick says it is a joke when stars sit out games that do not matter. Nick says Jordan playing heavy minutes in one of those games is part of why Jordan felt special. LeBron, over the course of his career, has not always done that. So if Jordan gets praised for it, what is LeBron supposed to get? That is not trolling. That is not hating. That is just following Nick's own argument to its natural destination. And once people did that, everything started looking shaky. Because Nick has spent so much time defending LeBron in the Jordan debate that fans already watch him for signs of bias. That's just the reality now. So when he accidentally hands Jordan fans a perfect talking point, they're not going to let it slide. They're going to run with it. They're going to replay it. They're going to say, hold on, the very same analyst who always tells us not to romanticize Jordan's era just gave us a story that does exactly that. He gave us a memory where Jordan looked committed, available, and respectful of the game even when there was nothing tangible left to gain. Here's the part nobody is talking about. Nick's story did more than praise Jordan's effort. It also praised the emotional side of sports. It was not just Jordan played 38 minutes. It was, I was a kid, I was there, and that experience mattered. That is huge, because fans do not fall in love with sports through advanced efficiency ratings. They fall in love with it through moments, through seeing the star they came for actually take the floor, through the feeling that the game mattered because the players treated it like it mattered. Nick tapped into that emotion without realizing how much it would strengthen Jordan's side of the legacy debate. Think about it from the fan's perspective. A kid gets taken to a game, the standings are locked, the result changes nothing, and yet the stars play. The kid remembers it forever. That is a beautiful sports memory. That is the kind of thing people cling to when they talk about what used to feel different. And then now think about the opposite experience. You buy the tickets, you bring your kid, you show up, and the star is in street clothes. That is the exact emotional contrast Nick created. He gave the audience both sides of the story without meaning to. One side becomes Jordan, the other side becomes the modern era. And who has been the face of that modern era longer than anyone? LeBron James. This is where it gets dangerous again, because the second you frame it that way, you are no longer debating just stats or rings. You are debating attitude, commitment, presence, respect for the regular season, respect for the fan. And that's where legacy conversations get uncomfortable fast. Because all-time greatness is not only about what you achieved, it's also about what your career felt like to people watching it. Jordan has always had this aura of never giving the audience less than the full event. LeBron, fairly or unfairly, has sometimes been seen as more strategic, more selective, more focused on the long game. And let's be honest, that perception already existed before Nick said any of this. That is why this clip caught fire so quickly. People were already primed for it. Jordan fans have been saying for years that one of the things that separated Jordan was how he approached every night like it mattered. LeBron fans would respond that LeBron played in a different era, that the sports science changed, that longevity matters, that mileage matters, that protecting your body is part of being smart. Fine, that debate already existed. What Nick did was accidentally pour fuel on one side by giving it a perfect, emotional, easy-to-understand example. Now it gets even more awkward when you remember that Nick was using this story to criticize the league itself. He called the situation a joke. He made it sound like the league's credibility is getting chipped away when stars don't play in games fans show up expecting them to play. And that's not light criticism, that's serious. That's saying the product is being damaged, that the league is hurting itself, that future fans may not connect to the game the same way if this keeps happening. Again, if that's your view, then fine. But if that's your view, how do you not include LeBron in the conversation when he's been the central star of this era nearly 20 years?
Because that is the deeper layer people are reacting to. It is not just that LeBron rested games. It is that LeBron helped define the era Nick is now criticizing. Stars set the tone. They always have. Younger players copy what the biggest players normalize. Teams adjust around the biggest stars. The culture of a league flows downhill from its most powerful figures. So if Nick wants to talk about how the game changed, if he wants to act like this culture of rest became a huge problem, that he cannot talk about it like LeBron had nothing to do with that environment. That is where the contradiction gets loud. Here's the part nobody is talking about. Nick was trying to separate LeBron from the modern league problems, but his Jordan story made that impossible. Because the moment he said Jordan played big minutes in a game that meant nothing, he unintentionally asked the audience to compare that with LeBron's habits in similar spots. He opened a side-by-side. And when you open a side-by-side between Jordan and LeBron, you better know exactly where every detail lands, because fans will not miss it. They are too locked in, they are too invested, they are too tired of double standards to let something like this pass quietly. And this is why people keep saying Nick exposed himself. Not because he admitted LeBron is not great, he did not. Not because he suddenly turned into a Jordan loyalist, he did not. He exposed the inconsistency in his own logic. He showed that when he talks about the league in the abstract, he is willing to use one standard. But when the conversation circles back to LeBron, that standard suddenly gets blurry. That is what fans hate. Fans can handle disagreement. They can handle bias, honestly. But what they hate is when somebody pretends to have one principle and then quietly makes exceptions for their favorite player. This is where young players usually make a mistake. They think legacy only comes from the big moments. It does not. It also comes from the little habits that people remember and add up over time. Did you show up? Did you play? Did you make the audience feel like every night could give them something real? That is why this clip matters, because it points to something bigger than one regular season game. It points to the way people build myth around a player. Jordan's myth gets stronger every time a story like this pops up. LeBron's gets more complicated every time someone points out the contrast. And before anybody twists this, let's keep it real. LeBron's career is one of the greatest ever. Nothing about this changes that. The longevity is insane. The production is historic. The championships, the finals runs, the ability to dominate across eras, all of that is real. None of that disappears because Nick told a shaky story. But when you're talking about legacy at the very top, when you're talking about Jordan versus LeBron, the margins are tiny and the standards get brutal. Everything becomes evidence. Every difference in mindset becomes a talking point. Every contrast gets magnified. That is exactly why this moment feels bigger than it should on paper. On paper, it's just an analyst telling a childhood story about seeing Jordan play. That's all. But in practice, it became something else because of who Nick is and what he represents. He is not just some random commentator. He is one of the loudest, most visible LeBron defenders in sports media. So when someone like that tells a story that makes Jordan look like the model of commitment and unintentionally makes LeBron look like the face of the problem, people are going to call it what it is, a self-inflicted mistake. This is where it gets dangerous one more time, because now fans are not just criticizing that one clip, they start rechecking everything. They go back and wonder, how many other times has Nick used one rule for the league and another for LeBron? How many other times has he pushed a standard only when it helps his side? How many times has he criticized a trend without fully acknowledging that LeBron lived right in the middle of it? And once people start doing that, you are no longer defending one take, you are defending your credibility. That is much harder. Because credibility in these debates is everything. You do not have to be neutral. Nobody is truly neutral in Jordan versus LeBron. But you do have to be coherent. Your logic has to travel. It has to survive contact with your favorite player. If your rule falls apart the second someone applies it to LeBron, then it's not a rule. It's just a weapon you only use when it helps. And that's the box Nick put himself in with this one. He gave a beautiful, emotional, pro-Jordan example and then forgot that it would echo directly into the LeBron conversation he spent years trying to shape. What makes this even more ironic is that Nick probably thought the story would strengthen his authority. He probably thought it would make his criticism of the modern league feel more personal, more lived in, more authentic. And it did. That's the funny part. It absolutely did. But it also made his blind spot easier to see. The more real the story felt, the harder it was to ignore the contradictions sitting inside it. If Jordan playing 38 minutes in a meaningless game is part of what made the NBA feel special, then what are fans supposed to think when LeBron in his era doesn't follow that same standard? That question is brutal because it comes naturally. You don't have to force it.